everybody, and welcome to Ministry Mondays with Meg. I'm Meg. Welcome back. We are in season 2, and I think we're like episode 6 now. If I look at my notes, yes, season 2, episode 6. Welcome. We are so glad to have you here today. I am Reverend Meg Biddle. I serve at the Leadership and Mission Building at ABHMS, the American Baptist Home Mission Societies. Um, and we are in King of Prussia. I'm the national coordinator for Ministry Life and the ABPS profile system. There's my commercial. Today, I have with me Dr. Ruth Alerte Jones. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I will say that Dr. Jones is a graduate, I guess, of the not CCL, the Co-Creators Incubator. You're in group 2,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In group 2, and is the founder of the HEM network, which I'm going to let her tell everybody a little bit more about. But Dr. Ruth, thank you so much for joining me today. Why don't you tell those who don't know much about you, or even those who do, tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and we'll just go from there.
Thank you, Reverend Meg. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. So, as you mentioned, I am Ruth Alerte Jones and founder of the HEM Healing E Extension M Maternal Network. So, the HEM network. And this ministry came to be not something that I knew that God was going to put into my heart. If I tell you a little bit about myself, well, for one, I'm an optometrist by profession. So I examine eyes. I don't do any surgery, but red eyes, glasses, contacts, diagnosing and treating glaucoma, different things like that. They're all in my scope of practice. So that's what I do by day. And then whenever God allows me to have time, my newest area of working is serving as the founder of the HEM network. So if we were to talk about how the HEM network came to be, I have to tell you about how I got in this position. I was young, recently married, and found myself pregnant and was just so excited to be pregnant. I'm going to be a mom, all these different things that were happening. My husband and I started speaking about how life would change. And shortly into the pregnancy, we found out that we had miscarried. And I found myself in a place where I was down spiritually, pretty broken, pretty frustrated, pretty confused. And I was angry at God for a while because I wondered, how could this happen to me? Being in a family that was pretty fertile, a family that was pretty, I come from a family of 7 children. So have tons of nieces and nephews. So just how could this happen to me? No one to my knowledge in my immediate family had suffered a miscarriage. There was someone very close to me that did have a stillbirth, but it wasn't something that they talked about frequently and things like that. So here I was, typically the health professional, now in the seat of being a patient who was just uninformed, who was grieving, who was going through shock, who was going through anger, confusion, isolation, self-blame, you name it, I went through it. I was pretty traumatized by the whole experience. But one of the things that I realized was that I had to sort of get help. And one of the ways that I found help was by looking things up and researching and realizing that miscarriages are pretty common. 1 in every 4 pregnancies results in a miscarriage. So that means if you've been invited to 3 baby showers for a year, then it might be a 4th that you weren't invited to right in your immediate circle, because not all moms get to make it that far. But as I began to just look things up and just educate myself on how common this is, it put me into a place where I learned to not blame myself as much. I learned to understand this was just something else that occurred that I actually didn't have control over. Um, I felt pretty like isolated. Thankfully, my husband was there to support me. My family was there to support me. But at the same time, it was still just, I was still just in a place spiritually, just trying to understand, okay, God, why, how, and where am I supposed to go from here? We don't really talk about things like this. We don't talk about death in general. After we lose someone that passes away, we surround them with love when someone passes away. We surround them with, fruit baskets and meals and visits and cards and flowers. And we just give them so much when they lose a member of their family or a friend who's close to them. But when someone loses a baby in the womb or has a stillbirth, there may not be a funeral. There may or may not be a memorial service. For some moms that go through stillbirths, many of them have to still go through that labor and delivery process. And it's a very trying experience to know that you've given birth and you go home without a baby. So for myself, I had to go through some counseling. I didn't run to a support group because I just didn't feel like that was a thing for me. But I started to look online and started to read more and began to journal periodically. Not so much periodically, but there was one particular piece that I wrote, and it was just an email that I wrote as I approached the 1 year anniversary of my miscarriage. So here I was, still a year later, scarred and traumatized and broken and hurt by this dream, this vision of becoming a mom that had become shattered beyond my control. But as I wrote this email, it said, one line from it said that, I want for God to give me peace and that God gives me joy. And I know the word says that God is able to do above and beyond all that I could ever ask, all that I could ever think, all that I could ever imagine. And I wrote this email trying to convince myself, still a whole year later, that maybe one day I could be a mom. Maybe one day I would be pregnant again and to be able to successfully carry to term, successfully give birth with God's help. So I would say, thankfully, I had a support system who read this email. I had the support system who was praying me through things because I really didn't feel strong to pray for myself. I was so broken. I was so hurt. And I consider myself a praying person, but I just couldn't really pray at that time. There's just sometimes you go through, or at least I went through something in life where I was at the point where I guess the prayers that I had done before were actually carrying me through at that point because I was too weak to pray for myself. So eventually I was able to get into start to visit a support group and go to, not on a regular basis, but I did, participate in a few activities. And there was one particular book that I read that was very helpful to me called Hold On to Hope by Dr. Stacey Edwards Dunn. And that gave me some inspiration. But when I read that book, it was, I can't remember exactly at what point I read it, but when I read it, it was like, oh my goodness, this is what I'm going through. And it was a reminder that you're not going through this alone. It was a reminder that other people have been through this before. They just may or may not have shared their story. And so God was starting to plant seeds in me. He was starting to pave the way to help me realize that, you know what? You're going to be telling your story one day. And I didn't know this. But probably, even as I looked in this for these support groups and things like that, what I felt was missing for myself was this centralized area of spiritual support. Because remember, I was angry at God, for a while. But then God started to just work in my heart little by little. Because with the trauma, you'll experience different triggers, whether it's being invited to a baby shower or going to church on Mother's Day or avoiding going to church on Mother's Day because they may say, all the mothers, please stand. And then here you are thinking, my baby's in heaven right now, So for me, there was something missing. There was I needed a centralized spiritual support group that could help me in my pain, that could help me, that understood what I had went through because they had walked in my shoes.
Mhm.
So, I had been, if you say, tell me about yourself, I've been in ministry for years, started with teaching vacation Bible school, children's choir, working with the youth in my church, working with AB Girls National Leadership Team, American Brothers Women Executive Committee, you name it, and then moving up to Co-Creators Incubator with ABHMS. So I've had multiple ministry roles, preaching at my local church, multiple ministry roles. But all those different experiences, whether it was standing in front of a group or being at a workshop or leading a workshop, preparing a workshop, and the studies that God had put in my heart to do in seminary were all part of his plan to get me ready to lead this ministry. I had no idea. Now, if I were to be honest, I remember reading online when someone wrote about their miscarriage. And I thought, I would never post about something like that. That's way too private. But clearly, when that person posted, it was a seed that was planted for me to realize, you know what? It's okay to talk about it. Maybe if more of us did talk about it, more of us would know that we're not alone. More of us would know that, that probably was God putting her on my pathway. I can think of two people in particular, actually three now that I think about it, that God put them on my pathway to read those posts, to read that video, to watch that video, I should say, read those posts, to watch that video, to see that people had been through this and how they were speaking about their grief and how it was, I guess, healing to them to speak about their grief. So for myself, it took a while for me to get to this point. But I think I know part of what the turning point was to actually get pregnant a second time. Now you would think, oh, she's pregnant again. This is great. This is exciting.
You were scared, right? I mean, this is what I'm anticipating, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Being pregnant after a loss was more traumatic than the first time being
I'm sure.
pregnant, because I had to fight with the devil on a constant basis, week after week. Okay, we made it past the 12-week mark. I made it past the 13th mark. I made it past the 14th week mark. Okay, we're in second trimester. We're in third trimester. Okay. And I had to constantly fight to think positively. And that's where God was starting to bring the healing process to fruition. Now, I do realize that not everyone gets to experience a second pregnancy or a third pregnancy. And that's part of why this ministry is here, because wherever you are on your journey of healing, I want to walk with you. We want to walk with you. Myself and my team. I have 6 amazing ladies that, are working with me, that are part of my board on the HEM network. And this team that I have working with me, we want to be there for you, to support you in what you're going through, whether it's you directly or if it's not for you, if you know someone that's been through a loss and you want to help them. So if I backtrack a little bit, let's fast forward. Let's not fast forward. Let's rewind back to that email that I wrote as I pushed my 1-year anniversary. That would have been in 2015 that I wrote that email. In 2020, the wonderful year of 2020, someone from my prayer circle remembered that email, and they approached me via text and said, do I still have that email that I wrote about losing a child? Because they wanted to share it with someone who recently lost a baby. And to me, that was moving, because that was God showing me that, okay, by you speaking up, you're helping someone. The words that you wrote, you're helping someone. I was helping someone on their healing journey, or potentially could help someone on their healing journey. And it was significant enough to me that someone had remembered that email 5 years later and wanted to share it with someone else. So now, okay, so at this point, when I got pregnant in spring the second time.
How long? Sorry, let me ask. How long was it between your miscarriage and the time you got pregnant the second time?
I got pregnant in end of 2018, so gave birth in 2019. So miscarried in 2014, gave birth in 2019.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there had to be a whole lot of, am I ever going to?
Do I want to ever get pregnant again?
Yeah,
Does God want me to be pregnant again?
right.
Well, maybe I don't need to get pregnant again because God didn't let it happen the first time. There's just so many things that you experience.
Yeah.
And I used to see pregnant women all over at one point. And I remember talking to someone, they said, I don't see pregnant women all over. And I said, I do. They're everywhere. So you just become triggered by the, different things.
Yeah.
Now, for some people, their experience may be different. They may lose the baby and think, okay, it happened, but you know what? I'm ready to go. Let's try again.
Mm,
And for myself, it's just a matter of, it just took us time. Like there was, all the testing came out normal, all the biological, physiological testing was normal, but it just wasn't happening.
gotcha.
So it was like, okay, God, what now? So in 2018, when I got pregnant and I began to share with people, 2019,
Mm,
I was all over my social media. This is my
mhm,
miracle baby, not all over, but I was more open. This is my miracle baby. Again,
mm.
trying to convince myself, not fully saying that I had a miscarriage, but just saying, this is my miracle baby. I'm so grateful for a miracle baby. This is the baby that came in God's timing. Just speaking positive things. And on the inside, I was so afraid that the baby wouldn't make it.
And so then 2020, after you've successfully had your miracle baby, that's when someone asked about that email.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
But as I began to share, someone, uh, if I look back, so that was actually Mother's Day of 2020. But as I said, I started to post things, and I posted one day. People, we don't talk about miscarriages. We talk about babies, but we don't talk about miscarriages. Who's suffering in silence? And I asked the question, who do you know that might be suffering in silence? And I got inboxes, I got messages, I got comments on the post, and people just started to reach out to me more and more. So then I just started to share, oh, here's a good book that I read, oh, how can I help somebody? Here's a good book that I read. Here's a website that was useful to me. Here's an article that I read, just sharing the different resources that I had come across during my time of need. And I just found myself constantly networking people, and just sharing and sharing and sharing. And then the opportunity for the Co-Creators Incubator came, and I applied. And for those who don't know what it is, it's an experience to take a ministry idea and from a ministry, wherever you are, whether it's an idea or something you're already working on. For myself, it was just an idea at that point. The idea of having an organization that can support people that are going through loss, supporting the mothers, the fathers, the families that are going through loss, and also helping people to try to help them along their way. This was just all an idea to me that I was just kind of doing in my spare time, well, still in my spare time, but just doing it when I could. Um, and I applied for the program. I was accepted into this cohort and got mentored for 2 years into what you see today, which is now a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a 7-member board, hoping to grow the board more, who at this point we've done some workshops, a webinar, um, a few interviews, what have we done? Written up some devotionals, you name it. We're on our way. But if I tell you about the HEM network, the name HEM comes from that biblical woman, this woman in the Bible who touched the hem of Jesus' garment. This woman that
I
had an
didn't know this part of the story.
yes,
Oh,
yes, yes.
yeah, yeah. Keep going. Keep
Keep
going.
going.
Yeah.
So there's this woman in the Bible who had an issue of blood for many years. She went through societal being ostracized. She was in the lower social class, you know, looked down upon, but exercised her faith to get up to go meet Jesus one day because she knew where she was. She was just stuck for so long. She was just stuck.
She was stuck. Oh my gosh.
And
I
she wanted
didn't know that.
to
Oh
be
my
healed.
gosh.
That's where the name comes from.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
wanted to be healed. So that's where the name comes from. She touched the hem of Jesus.
This garment. Oh, that's
Now,
beautiful.
and that came in 2020 as well. And with this woman, if you study the story, when she extends her arm to Jesus, again, the name healing extension, she reaches out and touches Jesus. Now, when we're going through stuff, a lot of times we're too broken to reach out. And that was me. I was too broken to reach out to people. They had to come to me, to kind of help me up, help me get out the house, because I just wanted to stay home for a while. For some people, when they go through grief and loss, they're busy. They try to just kind of have to keep themselves busy and just go, 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 go. But when you go through grief and loss, you do need to take time to rest. You need to take time to recuperate. Your body goes through what my body went through with my miscarriage. I was afraid to give birth. I had two totally different experiences. Surprisingly enough, once I gave birth, I felt so much better than what I did when I had my miscarriage. My body went through a lot of trauma, physical trauma, during my miscarriage. And so if we think about that woman, she relates to me because, she got her physical healing, but as the story goes on and Jesus spoke to her, she's there and she's shaking and she's trembling. So she still was trying to process what was happening to her emotionally, socially, and spiritually. So likewise, when we go through these losses and trauma, no matter what kind of trauma it is, whether it's the loss of a child, whether it's the loss of a home, whether it's the loss of a parent, whether it's the loss of a job, whether it's the loss of, whatever loss it is you're going through, you may experience some social changes that you have to adjust to, some spiritual changes that you have to adjust to. There's a lot that you experience. So, looking to just help people, through prayer, through just being able to help them walk with them in their grief journey. Healing is not just a one-time thing,
Right.
It's a process, and granted, we are a faith-based organization, but regardless of whether or not a person practices any particular faith, we're just here to help those who have experienced loss. Our loss is what's going to unite us. Our loss is what's going to bring us together. It's shoes that you never want to walk through, but if you walk through them, you don't have to, if you are going through them, you don't have to go through them alone. And what I've learned in this process is that it's not just people that are of childbearing age that are suffering. I've met people on this HEM network during my journey as being the founder of the HEM network who have said, I lost my baby X amount of years ago, and I wish there was somewhere where I could go to. Now I realize it's not for everyone. Some people do just need to just be alone, So that's why our website will be there to have resources for you that you can go to, whether you want to, just read on something on your own, But for those that do want the experience, we're working on having an in-person experience so that people can actually come together and discuss, what it is that they're going through, how to support themselves, how to, transition back to work after a loss, how to, how to deal with the holidays after a loss. There's just so much that you go through when you have a loss. So that's
Now,
who.
what about men in this? I
Yes.
mean, I don't think we ever. I told you before we came on the air that my brother, my sister-in-law, um, their second child was stillborn. We did have a service. We are people of faith, and so for us, that was important. You know, stillbirth. She was named. She was all that. When you make things up for grandma and grandpa, her name still goes on. The grandpa's sweater still go. That kind of stuff. Um, you acknowledge, but um, what about the men in all of this? I think we forget about their grief, their trauma too.
That's an awesome question. Yes. So it's important for us to support the men as well. We're working on seeing what specifics we can do to help men, but our information is general. It's um, It's general. The men, what I've observed is that they have double the grief because they're carrying their own pain, and then they have to support the mom as well. So they carry double grief. It's grief in a different way because they may not necessarily experience the physical change that a woman goes through, but they had expectations as well, you know, for the families that are parents before, they may have a child or two before, and then the loss is their third or fourth child, so men need to be supported as well. It's not just for women. Hem Network, we'll call the maternal network. That's why it's called network. We support the women, but we support men as well too.
Yeah, because I don't know that society really. It's hard enough, to talk about the 1 in 4.
Mhm.
Add men to that.
Right.
We just I don't think we have done a great a great job getting there. So um, I'm so grateful for you and this ministry and that you know through all this pain that you've gone through, that God's used this, right, as it's been healing, it sounds like, for you, you know
Absolutely.
your husband as well has found, you know um,
Absolutely.
you know that's 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 beautiful.
And you bring up several points, as far as the men, especially, like, because that's become a common question when I speak now. What about the men? What about the men? I recently came across an organization called Sad Dads Club, and they're online. I've seen them on Instagram. I don't know if they have a Facebook or not, but I know they are on Instagram, Sad Dads Club. And they just share things. I believe they meet once a month virtually, and they just share things, inspirational, um, things from the perspective of what happens with the fathers. So it is important for us to remember them and know that it's not just the mom who loses. It's not just the mom, it's not just the dad, but the whole entire family.
Yeah.
If there were other children in the family and they had, expectations, how do you then explain to a child your brother or sister isn't coming home? There are so many different levels, for the grandparents that want to support. Um, how then do we, have conversations with our relatives on, acknowledging the loss? Like you mentioned, that your niece's name is on different things. Um, it's that acknowledging, saying that child's name if they were named. Now, I have to be clear. For some people, they can't talk about it, they don't want to talk about it, and they won't talk about it. And that's okay because everyone grieves differently. But I think what's important in this whole process is to learn to ask for permission to speak about these things. If you are approaching someone, is it okay if I mention XYZ? I know it's a tough topic, but I want you to know that I'm here for you and I'm supporting you. And, you know, if I can help you, let me know what I can do. And sometimes people don't know what they need help with, but people always need to eat. you
Yeah.
know there's errands that can be run. There's always something that people could need help around the house, walking their dog for them.
Yeah.
Because that postpartum period, that recovery period can be very challenging. you
Mhm.
know
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we can't just forget people when they don't have that physical baby.
Yeah. And even I was just thinking, even our employers, you get 6 weeks maternity leave, and if you're fortunate, the men can get some paternity time. But what if when you don't?
So that's actually a big topic in legislation currently in various states. How much time is given to a parent when there's a stillbirth?
Mm.
It's in legislation currently.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of states don't yet fully recognize for you to get that 6 weeks after you have um, a miscarriage or a stillbirth. So you whether you're trying to get family medical leave of absence, or whether it is, like, fortunate for myself, I've set an employer that gave me as much time as I needed off.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I was in seminary when my miscarriage happened, and I just ran. I ran. I just dropped
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I was in no place to learn how to minister to other people because I needed to be ministered to.
Absolutely.
Um, and so it was challenging. So yeah, and this is what I mean by trying to adapt to society, after a loss. So
Yeah. Um, what a story. I want to make sure that I at least share this for a moment. Um, your HEM, your Healing Extension Ministries, Healing Grief of the Womb, and our founder, Dr. Ruth Alerte Jones, whom you can also find. Make sure I got that up there. We have got an email address. We've got you at the HEM network. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to find that book that you mentioned, and I'm going to I'll put a link below this. I'll even see if I can find something on that Sad Dads Club and see if we can put a link there as well. Um, what else? Is there anything in here that we're missing other than you know there's hope? I think that's what's most beautiful about your story is yeah, there was loss, and that was a long time to go between pregnancy one and pregnancy two, and but there's hope, right, in the midst of all of that grief. And I think your ministry, is so important. Whether someone's a Christian or not, whether people of faith or not, just to have someone who is safe to go to that says, "I get it," and um, and truly gets it, not just you know, um, I'll listen to you, or tries to put that time. Well, it's been so long since that happened. Shouldn't you be better now?
I
Or
don't think we can put a cap on grief
no, ever, ever,
because
no.
you never know what's going to trigger you.
Yeah,
But God is a healer,
yeah,
you know. God is a healer. However He chooses to heal you, however He chooses to bless you in His own timing. Um, and it's just something we have to learn how to trust God on. It's not easy, but we have to learn how to trust God that He's going to bring us to where we need to be when we need to be there.
exactly. So as we wrap this up, now we get to go to my favorite parts, other than the intro, that's just me being me. But the joy question. So you can answer this however you want. 36 episodes now. No, I've not had two people answer it the same way, but that's not pressure or anything. This is just answer it however you want. So consider everything you do, your day job, your ministry. What brings you joy?
I would say, first of all, God, because I can't do much without Him. My family, like I said, I come from a large family, so I'm seeing it's all intertwined. God has blessed me with a great family, awesome siblings. My parents are now both deceased, but because of my siblings, and God, my husband, I'm able to, still have joy and still able to just, move on and being able to help other people. Um, I don't like to see anyone, suffering, whatever they're going through, So um, I would say that those are the things that bring me joy: my family, my husband, my siblings, and just helping people to be able to just connect. And that's why Him is here.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great answer. I mean, not like there's a wrong answer, but
Right.
So we want to thank everybody for tuning in today, watching the replay, all of that. A couple of things, places where you can reach Dr. Jones is at the Maternal Network at Gmail, at the HEM Network. You can Google her and find her because I did that ahead of time. You can. She's there. Um, Connect with her. I will make sure that we find those books and maybe even that Sad Dads Club. See if we can put a link there. Um, but if you're somebody who needs somebody to talk to, somebody to reach out to Dr. Ruth, and I'm sure she would love to support you in your own journey. You just have this calming presence about you, and I really appreciate that. That it's lovely, and that um, you share your story, and it doesn't come across as someone who's bitter, by the world and the things that have happened to them. So I am grateful to you and this ministry that you have, um, and I certainly will share you as a resource and the HEM network with with other people. Um, so we thank our audience for watching us, for ABHMS for letting me ramble to people and giving them a place to share their stories and share their ministries. And you can find me. Just look at Ministry Mondays with Meg. I'm on social networks and internet. Well, you'll find me. Um, and we'd love to share more with you and Dr. Ruth Jones. Thank you so much for your time and for this valuable ministry.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank everybody for watching. And we'll be back next Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much.